Happy Wednesday, friends. Scott Barber here with another reflection from the Rev. Today we're in Philippians chapter 1, verse 29, and couldn't help but think about vegetables in relation to the passage today here. I've got a couple boys, and one in particular hates vegetables. Now, I was kind of like him growing up as well. I don't know how many of you as children loved vegetables, but there was kind of this ethic about food that if it tastes good, it must be good for me, right? And growing up, I didn't like mushrooms. I didn't like spinach. I didn't like beans or things like that. And my youngest son, he would just rather do without all vegetables altogether. Maybe eggplant, which is interesting, but the rest of vegetables, no. If it doesn't taste good, it must not be good, right? And therefore, if it tastes bad, it must be bad for me. Well, this kind of ethic is the same kind of reasoning that we can use when it comes to suffering in life. When things don't feel good, it must be bad. If it feels bad, it must be bad. But if it feels good, then it must be good. You know, that's not a really great ethic or reasoning by which we should determine our ethics or determine what is good or meaningful in our lives. And oftentimes, isn't that how we approach things like suffering, right? Suffering doesn't feel good. It never feels good. That's why it's called suffering. I mean, you mentioned the word, and it feels bad, right? Well, what Paul talks about here in relation to the Philippians, he himself, he's in jail, life sucks, his freedom's stripped away, his comfort's stripped away, his life is threatened, he's physically beaten and things like that. Like, it's just not a good day for Paul, right? It's a whole, multiple years of bad days. Well, it's the same thing, similar things going on for the Philippians. They're having a bad time, and they're under persecution, and they're wondering, why is this happening? How can this be good? Have we done something wrong? Because we can also believe that bad things happen because we've done bad things. Well, Paul explains here something that just blows our minds, all right? And how do we think about suffering? Well, he says this in Philippians chapter 1, verse 29. For it has been granted to you that for the sake of Jesus, for the sake of Christ, that you should not only believe, but also suffer for his sake. It's been granted. That word granted means gifted. It's been given to you as a gift to not only believe in Jesus, that believing is trusting in him as Lord and Savior to receive salvation. Hey, we like that, right? We like being saved from the consequences of our sin. We like the whole idea of being saved and going to heaven. That's a good thing. But he says you're gifted not just to believe, but you've been gifted to suffer for the sake of Jesus. Now this, I don't know what's happening for you right now, but boom. This is a gift to suffer for Christ? Well, once again, salvation is a good thing. We love what Jesus does for us. But what suffering does is it sanctifies us. That's the spiritual word. Sanctify means to make holy, to make us like Jesus. We love what Jesus does for us, but he didn't just save us to take us with him for eternity. He saved us to change us. And suffering makes us like Jesus. Suffering, have you noticed it? In this life, in this season and time, it strips away a lot of the things that we thought were really important, the things that we thought were within our control, the things that we thought were lasting, but they're not. Suffering strips us down and helps us to make the most important things the most important things. It shows us what's truly lasting. It produces in us the likeness of Jesus. There are things we can't know about God. There's things that we can't become like in terms of knowing Jesus without suffering. Suffering isn't good because it feels good. It's good because it produces Jesus in us. It's good because it strips away from us things that are not priorities, that are not lasting, that are not important, that are not Jesus. So we need to let our ethic, our sense of meaning and purpose about suffering be shaped not because it feels good, not because something tastes good. Is it good for us? But what it produces in us. And so let our response be, friends. This is deeper stuff, okay? I acknowledge this is deeper stuff. And this is harder stuff for some of you to realize with whatever circumstances and suffering you're in addition to the coronavirus. But our posture that Jesus is inviting us into, there's goodness here. There's depths that we could go to that we can't go to otherwise when things are all hunky-dory in our life. Our posture he's inviting us to is, Lord, your will be done. Do whatever it takes in me. Produce what you want in me. I surrender. I surrender. Not a resignation of whatever, Jesus. I give up. No. This is a resilient kind of surrender. Jesus, do what you want in me. Have your way. Let this suffering do what you want in me. Friends, I guarantee you will know a joy that is deeper and more profound when our circumstances don't need to go our way. And when we don't determine our circumstances, the goodness of them, by how we feel about them. But when we say, Jesus, whatever it takes to make me like you, oh man, friends, there is depth there for you and me. Let's surrender. Let's receive this gift that we've been granted. Blessings.